Inspired Girls. Welcome back to a new episode of the Inspired Podcast. I'm Jessica, and I'm on the Inspired team here at X Church, and today we're diving into comfort culture. We're talking about what does it look like in our culture to be comfortable and what really holds us back to doing hard things. Janice, Megan, and I are talking about what it looks like to do hard things and maybe some practical advice of things that you can do to jumpstart yourself out of comfort. Listen in. Welcome back, Inspired Girls.
Woo.
We're glad that you're here for
Yes.
episode 8.
So excited. 8.
Here we go with the Spanish again. We're in episode 8. Last week, we talked about emotions. That was real fun. I think I went home and cried.
I took a nap because that was
a nap. Oh my goodness.
That was like exhausting.
Yes, I got done with it.
Yeah.
I felt the same way. I was like, I just feel like I saw my counselor that morning, and then we did that, and I'm like, I feel like I've just been in therapy all day.
Yeah, like I was driving home and I was like, I don't really know like how I got on this road. You ever have those
like where you're mindlessly going and you don't even like
didn't turn on the radio, like it was silent, and then I was like, I think I just need to like close my eyes and my mouth.
Oh, after that podcast, I definitely am guilty of like my kids were driving me crazy and we were all cooped up in the car because we had to make our trip out to Easton. And I was just exhausted. Yeah. I was exhausted of talking about emotions. And then here I am blowing up my kids. Like, I had to go back and apologize that night. I'm sorry that I yelled at you, but I don't know what it was last week. That emotions podcast.
Everyone should be thankful they weren't in my car on my way home from that, because I would have blown up too. I was just like, whew, I don't know. It just hit me.
It's just very charged.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that since it's something that we have to deal with every single day, I think it kicked up some of the dust.
Yeah. I feel like the vulnerable conversations too make me want to like clam up for a while.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I've revealed enough of myself to people for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing and what I've learned, and like, especially sitting at this table, having these conversations and inviting you guys to listen into them. And I hope that each one of you walks away from a conversation like this knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And that us three do not have life figured out in full.
Definitely not.
And it's really like almost just we learn as we stumble.
Yeah.
And we continue to go and continue to put God first. And that is really like how we're able to have some of these conversations. And so hopefully you feel right at home when you're listening in, because we are just going through life just like you.
Yeah, well, we're figuring it out, you know, and it's like, we want to take our masks off, because when we take our masks off, then others will do the same.
Like our COVID masks?
Yeah, our COVID masks.
That baby's been off for a while.
Yeah, it's been off for a while, yeah.
No, but you mean like our facade.
Our facade mask.
Well, I've noticed that when we're coming up with ideas, I'm always like, well, I'm struggling with this week. And so a lot of our ideas actually come from like
personal
things that we're like, this is hard for me this week. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Hey, and that's really how the best conversations happen, even with you around your friends.
Yeah.
Is finding that entrance of vulnerability with someone to be able to say like, yeah, I'm really on the struggle bus with that.
I feel like I'm still taking naps from when we did our forgiveness episode. Like I'm still taking recovery naps.
That was a while ago.
I was going to say that was a while
I've been getting
ago.
some good sleep though. Who needs melatonin when you have the Inspired Podcast?
That's
Nobody,
right? That's right. You got
Literally no one.
So, in light of talking about emotions last week, let's just continue on the train of like what we're learning for ourselves and inviting you in as well, because this week we're going to talk about comfort culture.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Comfort culture and doing hard things. And a lot of this was birthed out of our conversation that we had this past Sunday as Pastor Tim was preaching on resilience. Is it we three or us three? This sounds like really weird when I say this.
I don't know.
Three?
I think it's we three, because if you're saying like we got this out of it and you take the 3 out and it makes sense, that's what you're supposed to say.
Okay. Well, as we were talking and brainstorming our next topic, each one of you guys said, and like me as well, that Pastor Tim preached 2 back-to-back Sundays on it. And it was this past Sunday, it was kind of a surprise to him because he said on Tuesday of the week that before leading up to Sunday, he really felt like God was like, don't leave it yet and keep talking about it. And I can tell you, me sitting out there listening, I was like, yes, this is a lot. This is a lot of what people deal with right now is comfort culture, how not to give into so much of your comforts, but also like the other end of the spectrum is it being super hard and knowing that you can go into facing something hard with a lot of resilience and hope.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I struggle to find the balance between the two. But I think that let's go ahead and start with the comfort culture and like, what is a fact about today? I mean, how do we coddle that culture? Because I'm guilty of it, and I don't want to do hard things. But I mean, like, what are we talking about? We're not talking about reinventing the wheel, right?
No. I think when I think of comfort culture, I think about the idea that the impetus seems to always, let's find the easiest and fastest way to do anything that requires the least amount of effort out of me or whatever around me so that I'm not uncomfortable. And, I've just finished reading a book recently. It's called Resilience by John Eldredge, which is really good. And he talks about comfort culture and that, the idea of comfort culture makes us soft.
Yep.
And it drains us from resilience. And I love this quote. It says, when you grow up in a world where everything is done with a few clicks on your phone, it doesn't exactly develop resilience. Because resilience is ability to, in a way, kind of like bounce back.
Yep.
Yeah.
To be able to handle hard things, hard situations, and get through it. But when things are so simple or we're, in a way, our culture coddles us.
Yeah.
We don't have the resilience. It's like the first hard thing that comes up, people just, so often just kind of like collapse and say, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is what I see in comfort culture. I think our culture is obsessed. We talked about idols a couple times ago. I think that's an idol of our culture is comfort.
Oh yeah. That's so true.
But we all are in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I go home. And what do? I get into my comfy clothes.
Yeah.
Come on, I want to be comfortable,
Yeah.
But, and that in itself is not like, okay, I'm sorry, you got to get the burlap out, put it on. That's not burlap.
You have to wear wool in order to step out of your comfort culture.
Right? You don't have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's not what we're saying. But if you're always trying to find the escape instead of facing something, then that's the problem. I mean, it can be everything from, I have this problem with this person, they hurt me, they said something. Rather than confronting them, I'm going to do the comfortable thing and just cancel them and just ghost them, go away.
Yeah.
I think for me, a lot of what comfort culture is personally in my life like goes hand in hand with control, because I find myself most uncomfortable when I'm not in control of a situation. And so for me, when I think of like stepping out of my comfort zone, those are the situations where like I don't know the outcome. I don't know how I'm going to handle it. I don't know exactly like what my place is in that situation. And for me, that's like complete lack of control. And so what do I tend to like gear towards is situations that I can control. Like I will take on a million situations that I can control before I'll like even get close with a 10-foot pole to the one I'm like, well, I don't know how this is going to go. So for me, a big aspect of like me stepping out of my comfort zone is just giving up that control and being okay with, and really it comes down to, a lot of it comes down to trust and just trusting that once I surrender control of that situation, like it's going to go exactly as it's supposed to. And I think in our culture today, with the disruptions that have been going on for the past couple of years, we do really like things that we can control. Yeah. Like I would have loved to have controlled the housing market when my husband and I were buying a house, like it's things that, what makes things scary to me is when there are aspects of it that I I can't fine tune or make it look the way that I want to.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing with comfort that I've had to take a step back and look at is and why we feel like we're facing this problem in our culture. Why do we have a culture of comfort?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that like in my being, I don't want things to be hard. I think that it's been around since day one
Right.
in human history is that
Yeah.
we don't want things to be hard. I mean, and it's a great thing to have because or else we wouldn't have round wheels. I mean, like think about it.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
if the cavemen needed to transport something from point A to point B, like they had to have some sort of resilience that didn't
Mhm.
make them give up and then die out as a human race. So there is something underneath us that propels us forward and sparks ingenuity and creativity.
Right.
Because we had at some point our ancestors had to get out of their comfort zone and had to get outside of comfort. I think as the human race progressed, we found ourselves in systems that were put into place where we didn't necessarily agree with, or we were oppressed, or like, I mean, there was obviously, we've talked about this before, there was a ruler, I mean, there was a stronger personality, a stronger nation, a stronger everybody that would then oppress the people below them, raise their, their ethnicity up or whatever, and dominate this culture or whatever. I'm going here with something, okay? So they dominated this, and then we find this group oppressed. And then we fast forward to modern times, and we've talked about this a lot. Like even in church culture, in male and female culture, we've seen things come to light in recent years that has been oppressive,
Yeah.
Right.
and that we've seen that people have abused their power in whatever comfort they found themselves in, and they were enjoying comfort to the expense of someone
Right.
else not enjoying
Yeah.
comfort. And the people that were oppressed just had to sit there and say, well, I guess that's just how the world works.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in our modern times, we've seen this like surge of like, I don't want to live this way. I shouldn't have to just shove it under the rug. I'm going to talk about my emotions, what we talked about last week. And we find ourselves wanting it to be comfortable for us, because if we've been in a position where it hasn't been comfortable for us, then I'm like, by golly, I'm going to be the person to stand up and say like, this can't happen anymore. This is an injustice. And then the people whose comfort was disrupted now doesn't know what to do. Like you said, like they don't have control anymore. I
Yeah.
think it ties back into control. So they don't have control anymore. They don't have comfort. And so while someone raises up and says like, this is not okay, I'm not going
Yeah.
to shove it under the rug any longer, and I'm not going to sit here like this is how it's supposed to be, then it disrupts. And I think that's what we're experiencing in our modern day is we're experiencing disruption of all kinds. And so where we've dealt with discomfort for so long in some areas, we want to speak up about it and make a change and for it to be different, but we don't know how to do the work. There are some things that I don't think that comfort and I don't know what you call it, like ease of being able just like laundry, like you said, like we don't need to go down by the stream and wash our clothes,
That's
right?
right. We don't have to be beating it with a rock or whatever. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
I love my washing machine. Okay.
Yes.
I appreciate it. And I'm glad that even when, my mom, I remember my mom telling me about, the first washing machine she had was one where it had the tub, and then she had to do the wringer. You put the
Yes.
clothes through the wringer to squeeze the water out, because all it did was wash. And so you had this, like when your washer dies and it's all full of water and everything is soaking, and that's what she would do. And so when she got a washing machine that actually spun and all that was like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is great. So no, we're not saying go back to that.
But-
That's not
But what
the point.
but what you say had me talking about, or had me thinking about something else we talked about before this, and that was like the Luddite, right?
Yeah.
You learned a new word this week.
I learned a new. I have this. Okay, I really am a word nerd, and so I get a daily email from the Merriam-Webster dictionary people
Yes, girl.
that gives me a word every day, and
Personal development right there.
Love it.
and usually I already know what they mean, but it's kind of interesting to get into like where the word came from. But the one yesterday was like, I'd never heard this.
Mm-hmm.
And the word is Luddite. It's capital Luddite. And basically what a Luddite is someone who is anti-technology. And it's the person, like, if you want to put it into today's terms, would be like someone saying, I will never own a smartphone. I love my analog TV.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I don't even know what
Like, they don't want to update.
right. You know, this is as far as I'm going to go. I'm not going to go no further. And the legend is that the word came about in the 1800s during the Industrial Revolution, and there was supposedly a guy by the name of Ned Ludd, Ludd, and he was a weaver, and so he wove cloth by him, on a loom, and he went in and during the Industrial Revolution and went into a place and destroyed the machinery that was weaving cloth, and therefore
He was real serious.
displacing
Yeah, oh
the
my
people who
gosh.
were weaving things in their homes, or had their own home business, and because he was anti-technology, and so because of the machinery. So anyways, so that's what a Luddite is, and so we're not saying we need to be Luddites, because technology is useful.
Right.
It can be a tool.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, and it's something that I think, you were alluding to this, but I think God has put into us, we are creators, just like he is, because we are in his image. And so he's, we are going to come up with new ways of doing things, an easier way of doing things. I think where the danger comes is when we get passive with it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and to the point that if we don't have this particular thing, then we don't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and like the reason I brought up the Luddite thing is because do we not have this may be perceived, not real, but don't we have the older generation, the generation above you? I don't know what generation you are listening to this. The generation above you says that you have it easy because you don't have to XYZ.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you said, like your mom with the washer that had the spinner, she probably could very easily look back and say like, oh, you guys have it easy because you know what I did. That goes back to the same paradigm that we were talking about of like, she did not get to live in that comfort. And so
Right.
it's almost like she's envious of the people that get to reap
Right.
the benefits of that
Right.
ingenuity and that comfort. And then, like I think the danger is you can become bitter about it and like
Oh,
point the
yeah.
finger and look at someone that didn't put in the hard work like you did in a certain area and then just be like, well, like you're soft or you got off easy. And so I feel like that's where I am learning about these comfort things is everybody has a different, I guess, definition or idea of comfort.
Yeah.
Because we're all built differently. We all have different jobs. We have different callings. And so, like, you might have, like, I'm saying for me, like, I might have put in a lot of work, like, where I saw it was, like, real hard work of, like, I worked on myself. And 2 years down the road, I'm a better person because I was investing in myself. I was doing this. Well, I went to counseling, all this stuff. And then you might look at me and be like, yeah, but that's worthless because like you really just put in a bunch of work when you could have figured it out this way.
Right.
So I feel like another level of
Which
it
is
is
probably
just being
something I would say.
judgy.
Like that actually.
Like that you could have said like, well, you could have done that a lot easier.
If you would have just asked me, like,
Yeah.
I could have.
Yeah.
I think that's so true. I think a lot of times our source of discomfort is someone else's idea of comfort.
Yeah.
And so when we try and make our discomfort comfortable, we're making something uncomfortable for someone else. And I think
Well, like control.
Yes.
Because someone might like to be in the back seat and be a follower.
Right.
Right.
And that's where I thrive because I'm like, great, hop in my back seat.
I'll take you where you need
Right.
to go.
I know
But-
exactly where you need to go.
I think that a lot of like tensions right now in our culture come from that very source where it's like my level of comfort isn't your discomfort, but I'm not willing to live in a world of like my discomfort on your behalf. You know what I mean? And so I think when we try and like make these strides towards what's comfortable for us, it's like, well, like everyone, like this should be comfortable for you too, but that's just not the case because we all come from different backgrounds. And I think one thing in culture today that's really pressing especially on my generation, and I'm assuming like other generations probably feel this too, is just the pressure of time and how fast our world operates, and like how quickly, like you said, with everything at the touch of a smartphone, like where do you have the option to even grow roots or that resilience that comes from it? And so I think right now, a lot of times we will, in the spirit of saving time, let's cut these corners and let's do like the quick fix or something that, like I noticed this with refinancing student loans. I don't know if anyone's ever done that, but a lot of times it's like companies will advertise, you know, it's quick and easy online. Just fill out this pre-approval application and then we'll pay off your loans and then you pay us. Well, that sounds like great and it is really fast, but a lot of times there's a lot of research that goes into it, and there might be a stipulation that you can't pay it off early.
Yep, fine
and
print.
like yes, so it's like the fine print of our actions and our decisions in the spirit of saving time that we sometimes miss out on. And you could argue that in your attempt to become more comfortable, you've created a cycle of discomfort by skipping corners.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so how can we as a culture evaluate our decisions and really create a comfortable atmosphere when we're so focused on like time, like my time. I want my time, so don't take it up.
I wish that we could just all agree on like, and we can't because I don't think we ever will, agree what is worth it to work hard for.
Yeah.
See, because like, I think that there are a bunch of like comforts that we have that are the generation before us or even 2 generations before us. I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to say like all of our work, whatever we do, is not in vain because there's a fact that whenever we work at something, we always learn something.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we miss out on is when we choose to cut corners and we know we're cutting corners. It's a different night. It's a different thing when we know, when we're honestly innocent and we're just trying to do the best thing and then we learn hindsight.
Yeah.
But I think if you go into a situation where you know you're cutting corners and being lazy and taking the comfortable route, that it's not going to pan out for you like you really wanted it to.
Right.
But what is it like? Pastor Tim talked about you have to pre-decide that when you go in to consolidate your student loans, that I'm not going to just do a bad job and do the quickest thing. I'm going to put in the work, the hard work to research what's wise, ask a few people if they've ever had experience in that. Are there any red flags or is there anything that I need to watch out for? Looking up definitions of things, like what does that really mean? Reading the fine print. All of that is hard work.
Yeah.
And I don't think that many times we get ourselves into situations, like you said, like we honestly sometimes get ourselves into, we go the comfort route and we end up creating lots of discomforts for us. And I would say that's really true. And then what happens after that is we just have a spirit of disappointment. Yeah. And like we walk around everywhere and we bring people down with us to like, why do I have to do this? Life is so hard. And like, do you know what I want to say to those people?
Get over it.
Go ahead.
Pull up your bootstraps and do it.
Or just the whole thing of, adulting.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like, I hate adulting.
I'm just kidding.
Yes, I hate adulting. Well, guess what? You are.
Yeah, you are, and you have people responsible under you. And I know, like, I say that phrase too, like, I hate adulting. Or why do I have to adult this way?
Yeah. Because I think our natural thing is just tell me what to do. Like going back to what you were saying about time, it's like, just tell me what to do. I'll do a few clicks or whatever, or just tell me what to do and I'll just do it, rather than thinking it through myself.
Yeah.
And saying, and actually doing the work of doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sitting here thinking, it's like, it's kind of like you can type in it, autocorrects your spelling for you. I don't need to know how to spell. Because my phone does it for me. My computer does it for me.
All of my middle schoolers
right,
last year.
Yeah.
Or they try to abbreviate things and you're like, what is...
There's a difference between your, there.
Right.
You need to know it. Don't care what you think.
It's.
Yeah.
Let's just go through it all.
Oh my
right.
gosh.
And, and because as a person at this table who has lived the longest,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there are things that I just go like, really,
Yeah.
people?
Yeah.
Really, 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 you know. And yeah, my
And
kids.
it's really not just like, it's probably not convenience for you. Like it's not the problem of convenience for you. It's the problem of thought. Like you're like, just put some brain into it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. Before I was on staff at church, I worked in the medical field. I worked in a primary care office, and that was one of the things that, at some point, I can't tell you when. Yeah, I realized that okay, I'm one of the older people here, and we're hiring people that are a lot younger, just fresh out of school, things like that, and realizing that it's like, if you're reading something and it doesn't make sense, then you ask a question.
Yeah. Well,
Do
and
you
can
know what that
we-
And
is?
and that, or if it's like, you're looking at this thing that, a doctor wrote down or something, and it's like, that doesn't quite make sense. Go ask
Yeah,
before you
don't
go do it,
assume.
Yeah.
or think it through. It's like, and instead of just taking it this far and then
Yeah.
stopping.
Critical
Yeah.
thinking.
Yes.
Well, and like, can we, as all humans of the same race, like agree to accept people for the fact that they may not know something?
Yeah.
Because how many times have you felt like intimidated or scared to ask
Yeah.
a question?
I really do feel like
Because-
that's what keeps people from asking
Yes.
questions
Yes.
is intimidation.
because of how afraid you are of someone knowing that you don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, my fear of disappointment has kept me from asking questions that would allow me to do the job better because I want to seem like I have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I don't want people to look at me differently
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
think differently of me. And I've been on the judgmental side of like, they literally have no idea what they're doing. But I think like being on that side and being on the receiving end of it, like there is a lot of value in just allowing people to ask questions, because what comes of that? Well, you might find someone who knows what they're talking about
Yeah.
and knows what they're doing. I asked my neighbors a question about our landscaping, and they're like, "Oh, we know someone who could flatten your yard for you, like with a machine." And I was like, "Great, that sounds amazing," because I don't like manual labor, so it all like works out. But it's like, can
Is
we
that just comfort?
Yes.
Yeah. She's claiming it.
Can we? But like, can we? Just like right now, even if you have to tell yourself daily, like, can we just create a space where people can be okay with not knowing something?
Yes.
Like,
Because it's
in-
our pride that gets in the way.
yes. And as like, I'm getting ready to walk into my first year of teaching, and there is no way I know everything that these students are going to ask me. And over and over and over again, I've spent so much time like, okay, well, like in this situation, how am I going to play it off like I know it? Or how am I going to like instill confidence in them so that they know that they're learning from someone who like knows what they're doing? And honestly, like there are going to be times where I'm just going to be like, you know what? I don't know. But the beauty of science is that we can create an inquiry and a questioning mind and do some research and figure that out.
Yeah.
So can we like, just no matter what the situation, just like be okay with people not knowing? Because as soon as you like place that judgment on someone, like that will stick with someone. And then especially in like the medical field too, like wouldn't you want your care provider asking questions?
Yes.
So let's create a space and like a little pact, because I think it would take us a long way,
Yeah.
like a long way.
You're not wrong.
No, that's for sure. That's for sure.
It-
I think it, and but what you're talking about means that you have to put some effort out there.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. It's in some ways, even though it seems almost counterintuitive, it's easier just to, I think, maybe emotionally or mentally to say, okay, I'm just going to figure this out myself because I'm afraid of being judged, or I'm afraid, or my pride is telling me I should know this or whatever. So this is the easy way out, because I don't then have to get uncomfortable and talk to someone or ask a question, admit that I don't know it all, and it gets us into this really bad spot. And so I think that instead of doing the harder thing, we do the easier thing because it's more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think doing hard things is a big crux of this.
Yeah.
It's what keeps us in our comfort, that we,
Yep.
I'd rather just, I mean, it's like I don't want to go to this meeting or this group because I feel uncomfortable around people, or they maybe they won't like me or whatever. So I'm not going to do that hard thing, even though I really feel like I should be. But I'm just going to back off.
Yeah. Well, and like as you were talking, it had me think of so you asked, can we just create a space where you who hold more knowledge, we're going to say that that's like the case, create, take or set aside your pride and be okay with someone asking you and being a teacher. Yeah. Can we have more teachers, please?
Yes.
On the other side, I would say if you're one that you're like, I know that I need to learn things, can we say for them, and I'm going to put myself in that group too, be a good question asker. I would think that, and I don't know like statistically or whatever, but I want to say the best way to learn, maybe it's the best way I learn, is to ask good questions. I mean, there's books written over this, like how to be a good question asker. And what I found is when I interact with a good question asker, most often they are the ones with a lot of empathy, a lot of grace, and they're really smart. Like, because I've been trying to teach my older son this, because my older son is really smart. And so, he can come off to his brothers like, oh, you don't even know that? Or like tries to be like, well, I know that and you don't. Almost like keeper of the information. Like, I'm not willing to share the information with you because if I did, you would be equal to me.
Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with in our society, is if I share what I know, you might be equal to me and take my power away.
Yeah.
And so what we've been teaching him a lot is to be a good question asker and shut your mouth and listen.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to learn by listening. You're going to learn by listening. You're going to learn by asking good questions. So, that, like you said, on one end, like if you were the person being asked questions, set aside your pride and, go forward and be kind to someone and like share the information that you know, without any strings attached.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, be a good question. Make it your purpose to get out of your comfort slump or whatever, to ask good questions.
Yeah.
Research that.
Yeah.
I think one way, so like as we kind of go into like doing hard things, I think one way that can maybe help us build the character to be able to withstand hard things is that you have to learn some intrinsic things. Like a lot of it comes through experience. I don't know about you guys, but like when I've chosen to step outside of my comfort zone, or like some comfort that I haven't, or it has a lot of times been fear of failing, fear of rejection. And I've had to be brave just to like learn something new. And oftentimes we just want to stay in the fear. We want to stay in the rejection because it's honestly easier. I mean, like, you're plagued with the fear and the rejection, which is not fun, but it's easier to stay there because you're not having to do something hard and to learn something new. It's hard to learn something new sometimes. But I almost want to say, like, what if you chose an activity that doesn't have anything to do with fixing your immediate problem, but chose an activity that took perseverance, consistency, and research?
Yeah.
I mean, this activity could really be anything. Like, one that comes to mind for me is gardening. Like, when my kids were little, like newborn, 3 and 5, I was like, I'm going to start a garden. I don't garden anymore. But what I did learn through that experience was so much.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. And like, it would be easy for you to say, like, for you to sit here being judgy, you'd be like, why don't you just go to the grocery store and buy tomatoes? Like, and I can do that. And honestly, my idea of growing a garden was not that I would like be ready for the zombie apocalypse and I would need to know how to make my own veggies or grow my own veggies. It doesn't stem from that. It did not stem from I want to keep an eye on how my vegetables are grown and I don't want any pesticides on it, because I use pesticides on my plants. Okay, but squash bugs, they kill my zucchini.
I buy too, so it's fine.
Well, so I'm saying that those, like, me learning to garden did not stem from like I want control.
Yeah.
It stemmed from I want to learn something new.
Yeah.
And And so I went out, like I had a 85-year-old neighbor that lived next to me, and I love her, Mrs. Becky. I don't live next to her anymore. I'm sad, but she gardened her whole life. And I would go over there and be like, what do I do about this? And like, what do you know what this bug is? And why overnight is my zucchini completely demolished?
Oh, the worm got it.
Yes. And so, but I would ask questions.
Yeah.
And along the way, I researched.
Yeah.
I asked questions. I planned and I developed. And it was great. I learned so much. I learned that I don't like being out in 85 to 95 degree weather picking weeds when I could literally go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
But I really feel like what God taught me down in the dirt on my knees, digging through this flower bed with stuff, taking weeds out of things, putting vines on sticks so it grows straight. I feel like he taught me so much about hard work, perseverance, consistency.
Yeah.
What you sow in, you will reap. And that's a story. I mean, that's a parable in the Bible, is like the parable in the sower, or the parable of the sower. Sow in seeds on a rocky ground, and it like the birds come and eat the seeds. Sow in seeds on like a thorny ground, and what is it? No, in like a craggy ground where it grows in the sun.
Shallow ground.
Yeah, shallow ground. The sun zaps it. Like put the seed in like and it gets choked out by the world, by the thorns of the world. And I read that parable as I was doing this activity, and I was amazed at how much God taught me. Yeah. Now, I don't grow my own vegetables anymore, but I learned a little bit of what it looked like to research, to ask questions, to stick with something until it was done.
And I think that a lot of times, like, our fears, whether it's of disapproval or rejection, whatever the case may be, that may keep us from stepping outside of our comfort zone, a lot of time they're surfaced from sources of that rejection, like from a past experience. And so I think that when we're comfortable in our fear, it's because the thought of the actual rejection is more uncomfortable. Yeah. So let me stay here where I'm still uncomfortable, but at least I'm not as uncomfortable. And I think that, like you said, with gardening, like, you can pick something that's not necessarily like, okay, let me put myself out there and date again. Yeah. But it can be something where you like may experience that you can overcome that fear without putting yourself in that more uncomfortable position. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I think that's a really good practice, whether it's like rejection or whatever the fear may be that's keeping you in your bubble of comfort, like where you feel like you really can't grow, then pick an activity or just talk to someone about like something you could do to help chip away at that. And that would, like you said, would require consistency, but at least you learn as you sow in, you learn what it feels like and how rewarding it can be. To start
very
to
rewarding,
step
because
out.
I mean, like, you can go to the grocery store and buy, cherry tomatoes, but don't they just taste better when you pick them off your own vine?
I love fresh tomatoes.
Whether that's true or not, I felt like when I ate my produce, I am like, this is so tasty. And look, I made this whole garden salad out of my whole garden for you. And I love you.
Emphasis on garden.
Yeah. And so like, there's a lot of accomplishment.
Yeah.
And it showed me that even if I put in the work, like I actually, your level or your standard of comparison changes, because I'm not comparing my tomatoes to the grocery store. Like, I know I can go to the grocery store and buy like tons of them, but like my standard was, I did it. Yeah. And it's mine. Yeah. And it was really good. Yeah. And so I'm not comparing my tomatoes to Miss Becky's tomatoes. I'm not like, oh, I wish I had her tomato. It was like, no, I did this and they grew and they're red. I didn't kill them. And that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. I love that.
And I feel like that accomplishment can go a long way. It doesn't only pertain to like gardening. It can pertain to like things that you learn in life too. But I mean, like, I think of this like picking an activity, something like that. Another thing I think about is investing your money. Like, I've been told, I know it's wise to invest my money, but like, you hear people all the time say like, even just $5 a month, it's a compound interest, blah, blah, blah. I totally get that. But like, what would it look like if you actually put that into practice? That's not hard. It's not, like you're not going to lose anything. Well,
Yeah.
actually you might lose your money now.
Yeah.
But I'm just, well, actually, you just invest now because the stocks are down.
Yes,
So
right.
then you'll like really make up later. But like, you don't have much to lose is what I'm saying is like,
Mm-hmm.
what if I researched where to invest my money? What if I asked questions of
Yeah.
those around me who have invested their money before? And what if I actually did it? And then I watched it grow.
Well, and like, I love the what if mindset because I feel like our fears are based out of like, when this happens, like, this is how I'm going to feel. So that's why I'm staying here. But what if we take it on as like, well, what if this is the little bit of a push that I need to be able to overcome that?
Yeah.
Like, what if I do this and it actually works out? What if I can make my way through this and like come out on the other end with a garden salad that like I literally picked out of my own garden? And so it's not like, well, when I actually go through with this, it's totally going to fail, but it's like that small activity that taught you so much could have been just the push that you needed to step out of that comfort zone with confidence. Like, I think that when we step out, we gain the confidence we need to overcome that fear and like literally never need to go back to that place.
Well, I think
Yeah, like I never need to have a garden again because I learned what I needed to learn. Okay. Now I made a friend. Well, I've been friends with her for a long time, but my son has this friend, and his mom has her own garden, and I mean, like, it's like a huge garden. Like, they live on a lot of land, and it's like they have like apple trees, pear trees, plum trees, like
my
all this stuff.
gosh.
And then she found out that I like fresh produce, so she like came to pick up her son yesterday, and she brought over like 5 zucchinis and like
Yes.
7 squashes and a whole bag of tomatoes and peppers, and I'm like, and I sent her a picture last night of like my roasted vegetables. I'm like, see, look. Then, like, once you've put in the work and you know how rewarding it is, just find a friend who can give you the benefits of their hard work.
right. And if you're not into gardening, you find the person who is, because they're going to have excess and you're going to help them that way.
Yes.
You know, especially with the zucchini.
Yes.
You don't want to waste that. I know you don't want to waste that. So.
No. And I there is something about being a lifelong learner. And being a lifelong learner is just is stepping out of your comfort zone. I used to teach a lot of piano lessons, and children are far easier to teach than adults,
Oh, for sure.
because children are used to always, I don't know, and so I'm going to learn.
Yeah.
Whereas adults are so used to saying, but I know all this stuff. I know how to do life. I know how to do this. And to start something from zero and then go from there is really frustrating. And it would be like, I would say, okay, just give me 3 months. You know, you will catch on probably a lot faster than a 6-year-old would, but it's going to sound bad for a while. It's going to sound really stupid and simple, but just keep doing it, and it will all start to come together.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, many times they would just get discouraged because it's like, this sounds so, you know, elementary, you know, and it's like, yeah, it is, but you're building all these skills so that you will be able to play the way you want to play. And so I think that's, as in our adult lives, we tend to just say, this is as far as I'm going to go,
Yes.
and I'm going to go no further.
You're a Luddite.
Yeah, you're a Luddite. I mean, it was funny because I think it was yesterday up in the office, somebody said, what age what was your peak age? You know? And I said, I don't know, I haven't hit it yet.
Oh.
And I'm like, no, it's like, what are you talking about?
I will
peak
say about
age?
lifelong learners, it is worth your investment to find one like that's older than you, because and you'll see them, and you'll know what it is if now you've heard the term lifelong learner, because let me tell you how they're going to find them. They ask good questions, and you being younger than them can come to them. I'm going to use you as an example, and they won't reject you, and they won't make you feel like you're an ant,
Right.
like as small as an ant.
Yeah.
And they'll ask you questions, and they'll listen to your experiences. And that's how you find a lifelong learner. And I never want to stop learning, because the moment I stop learning is going to be really boring, and I'm going to be a really cranky person. I don't want to be like that.
Well, a couple things I'm learning right now is about a year ago I took up watercolor painting. I'm not like an art. I always say, God, you gifted me with music, no, but art, you know, you kind of skipped over that one. But I just said, I just really want to try this, you know. And I have a friend who has a degree in art, so when I get stuck on something, I call her, and you know, it's like, okay, so what do you recommend? I want to buy these paints, and you know, this is what I have in my head, but I don't know how to do it, you know, that kind of thing. And so, you know, I've been watercolor painting, and the other thing I'm working on, and when I finally get it down, I will actually come and demonstrate it. You're going to laugh.
What is it?
Okay. Have you ever been, you know, to like a carnival or a variety show, and there's a person that spins a plate on a stick?
Yes.
I'm learning how to do that.
You're learning to spin plates?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
That's
I
a
want to
thing?
do that.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the thing.
It's like not a basketball.
Yeah,
like,
it's not a regular plate. Anyways, and you start out with a plastic
it's not a
one.
regular plate.
It's a plastic one. The ones that they actually use, they're white, but they're actually metal. And but anyways, one day I was writing, I was praying, and I was writing in my journal, and I was telling the Lord that I just felt like the picture I had in my head was I had all these plates spinning.
Oh my gosh!
And I
I've
remember
used that
watching,
so many times.
you know, like years ago on TV, you know, they'd have the guy, you know, and he'd have all the sticks, and he'd start the plate,
and he
he'd
has
spin
them
it.
on his feet.
Yeah, and he had them on his feet, and he'd have this big long line,
On
and
his
then would
head.
start to wobble, and they were, you know, like, oh my gosh, he has to go get it, you know, and he goes and he spins it, you know, and it always fascinated me. But when I was writing in my journal that day, it was like, oh my gosh, this is what I feel like. I feel like I'm running around spinning plates, and I'm like, knowing how my mind works, it's like, I wonder how you do that.
Oh,
So I started
love
looking
that.
it up, and I found out all about, you know, the physics behind it and all the other stuff and why it works. And then I'm like, I wonder if you can just, like, where do you buy that? And so I found
Amazon.
I found a magic shop in New York City, and ordered it from them, and they have online tutorials and all this other kind of thing. And
I think we're gonna have you like on spinning plates next week.
Yeah.
I won't be ready by then. It's not that easy, but basically you have a stick that has a point on it. The plate is balanced, but it has an inside rim that's deeper than a normal plate. And even the metal ones are that way too, but mine's plastic because if the metal one goes flying, it could probably do damage to my house. So, but you know, and I've gotten it so I've gotten it up where it's actually spun. I had it spinning
a
for
fly
like
on the wall.
5 seconds. But it's like, I don't know. It was just like, I want to learn how to do that. I think it's so cool.
So
I love
cool.
that.
You know, I'm like,
Oh.
you know.
So at your house, we can find you sewing and altering clothes. We
Yeah.
can find you watercoloring. We can find you making a vision board. We can find you spinning plates
yeah,
And praying.
yeah. It's so
and dancing with your maracas.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have maracas?
Oh, I have all kinds of things.
Oh my gosh.
She does. I
Janice,
saw
really
her
wanna
driving
do-
in the car one day doing her maracas. I was like,
I love that.
love Janice. You would only see Janice driving and doing her maracas.
Yeah, it's a new definition of distracted driving.
I love like
You see like these billboards, put down your maracas. Don't maraca
it's a
and
new
drive.
statistic. I love that like you asked questions though and that led you to like discover new things about yourself. Because I think sometimes even just the act of asking the question can lead us like to the answer that we already had. It was just a matter of like asking it. Like my sister, she used to drive me crazy because she would ask me like, should I wear this to school? Should I wear this to school? And no matter what I said, she wouldn't wear it. Like she'd come out with like 3 or 4 different outfits. I'm like, yes, that one's my favorite one. And she'd come out with something completely different on and be like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm like, why are you
That's
wasting my
Trey's
time
world.
Why are you asking me?
asking me however many times if you should wear that? And I say, I give you my opinion and then you wear something different. Anyways,
Yeah.
I'm like, don't even ask me. But like, that was just how she like processed. And then she came to the conclusion on her own.
Yeah.
So I just love, like, even if asking the question is like the first step of a very long journey, you can still learn along the way before you get to the final solution.
And I think that when you do things like that, when you think about me figuring out how to watercolor is not like a life skill, if you want to put it that way. But when you do things like that, then I think it sets you up then for when life hands you something that is really hard.
Yeah.
Make a piece of art out of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that. But, you know, when life hands you something that's really hard, then it's kind of like it's already in you to
Yeah.
go to someone and
Yeah.
not hide. Because, that is our almost innate reaction is to isolate and
Yeah.
pull back and disappear or, and that kind of thing. But instead it's like, like you were talking about, like financial challenges of I've never had to deal with this. Okay, well, I need to ask someone
Yeah.
rather than feel like I have to know and
Yeah.
just and then just go down the drain. I mean, I think I have lots of favorite scriptures, but the one that's in John 16:33, it says Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he's telling them about all that he was going to. That he was going to the cross, he was going to come back, that things were going to be rough and things were going to happen to them. But he says, I've told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. That's a promise that most of us don't claim, which is that we will have many trials and sorrows. Yes, Lord.
Sign me up.
I claim that promise. We just don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's the promise too, though, is to take heart.
Yeah.
Because I have overcome the world, and in Him we have peace. I think some of the ways that we have peace in Him is being in community. Having a woman that maybe has been through some things and just say, "Oh, I know you went through this, and now I'm at this spot. How did you do that?
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
get through that?" Or whatever, and being able to talk with someone and ask questions. Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
exactly why God has us where He has us, in community
Yeah.
with other women.
Yeah. And I love what Pastor Tim said too, is when you do get that answer, or you do have a picture in mind of what you need to do, it's not praying for like, God, make this happen.
Make it
It's
easy,
like,
Lord.
God, equip me like with what I need to make this happen. So it's taking ownership of like creating that movement in your own life. And like the one that stuck out to me was a lot of times we like ask for patience, like just give me the patience to like deal with this person, but really we're asking like fix that person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like that, I was like, dang, like that is literally me. And it's not like,
Creeping on your
God,
DMs.
fix this person. It's like, no, God, like put in me a spirit of love and grace and forgiveness that will allow me to love them in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important, is when you're finding these answers and like you're seeking advice, it's okay, how can I pray for that advice to move through me, not for it to just like magically appear, because that's not rewarding. Like the reward is when you've gone through your zucchini getting eaten up, and then months later, like you have a garden salad with fresh zucchini. It's not like, oh, well, here's one like that just magically appeared and it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I know the thing when he was doing that, I was sitting there and it was just like, you know how sometimes it's just you hear something and it's like, oh, that's why. Oh my gosh. Because one of the things that, I've been praying about is like, Lord, I just want to pray. I just want to feel some joy. I want to have some really deep joy and stuff like that. And when he said the thing about so often when we pray, we're praying for the easy. We're praying for the easy. It's like you were saying, God, could you just make them less this way, and then I'll be more patient with them? and I realized that really what I was praying is like, Lord, if you would just change this circumstance in my life, or you would make this easier or make this less painful, then I could feel some joy.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, oh.
Yep.
All right.
My
so
gosh.
because what it gets down to is, how do you really know what joy is if you haven't experienced pain?
Yeah.
If you haven't had sorrow, if you haven't had difficulty or
if
whatever.
it hasn't been contrasted
Right.
with the opposite.
You have to. You have to have one before you really can have the other.
Yeah.
And and connecting with the joy that is just the joy through the Holy Spirit that's inside of me, no matter what. And I realized that, because I've been telling you, Lord, it's like, if you would just make this happen, or that happen, or not happen, then I would be in such a better frame of mind.
Gosh, that was
And that's
literally
really true, is that we have to look at our motives and also what we're praying and what we're asking for, and just saying, maybe God, you just want to develop something in me in this that doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the old thing about you can't have a diamond without pressure. You know, diamonds are just a lump of coal without, you know, the tremendous pressure, and it becomes a diamond. Though there are lots of times that I tell God, could you?
I'll take the coal.
Yeah, I'll take the coal.
Or it's okay, I don't need to be as shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Give me a
right.
little dull today.
Yes, it's like you got me on the potter's wheel, and could you not squeeze that hard? You know.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like so much more rewarding that way too, because then you can take that into the next challenge, no matter what it looks like.
Yeah.
But I think like once we see past the time that we'll have to put into it and the energy we'll have to invest and like the perseverance and we can get through that, like it is just so rewarding. Like some of the biggest reward in my life has been from what I've worked hardest for and towards.
Yeah.
So it helps me to even just think about like, okay, well, what's the last thing I like really worked hard for? And like how rewarding was that afterwards?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even if it's a hard time, to just say, you know what, I got through that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then I can get through this too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
for
saw
sure.
how God was faithful in that, and he surrounded me with people that I had a network or whatever. He's going to do the same now. It's knowing his character.
So good.
So good. So
good.
good. Sweet Caroline. I taught my kids that, or they heard that the other day, and now when they hear me say "so good," they're like, "So good, so good."
That is Penn State's victory song. Did you know that?
Yeah.
No.
Sweet Caroline.
No.
And we were, I forget what, it was like some important game. I don't remember the name of it, but it was at Penn State. And in the like last 7 seconds, Ohio State scored a touchdown, but Penn State had already started singing their victory song. Yeah. So then we sang it back to them. So that made me think of that. Anyways.
Well, anyways.
Go
Well,
Bucks.
we're glad that you joined us today. If you have not registered for the Inspired
What are you
Conference,
waiting
it.
for?
I
Do
need
it.
to.
Megan.
I know, guys, I keep forgetting.
I know you were getting married and everything, but
Right.
this is, you know,
This is
come
way
on.
more
You're like,
important.
you have no excuse. You're
Yeah.
out of married season.
That's
Guys, I just found a jar of like animals in my room, so just cut me some slack. I'm
Her
cleaning out my
schoolroom.
classroom.
Her
Schoolroom.
classroom.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Okay, but if you have not registered for the Inspired Conference, you're going to want to do that ASAP and
That's
get it
right.
on your calendar. And because we have some really great and exciting things coming up, you're going to be seeing a lot more about the conference on our Instagram page. So you're going to want to check that out. And as always, don't hesitate to email in to inspired@thex.church
Yes.
if you want to hear certain topics.
That's right.
We will be wrapping up our season in the not too distant future, but get it in, get a topic in if you want to hear us talk about it, and we will do it. So
Yep.
we hope that you had a lot of takeaways from today. I know I did. Now I'm
Same.
going to be brainstorming on what my next, thing
I'm about to
is
start a
that I'm
garden.
going to do. A garden?
Yeah.
Good luck.
There you go.
I'm gonna come to you for advice too.
Maybe not.
Knock on your door.
But anyways, we will see you back next week for another inspired episode.
Whoop. We'll see you then.
That's
Peace
right.
out.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening. Our hope is that everyone who hears these episodes, near or far, would know that the invitation at our table is always open. You might not be sitting at this table, but our desire is that you would join in on these conversations. So if you were inspired by today's talks, send us an email at inspired@thex.church. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, and questions. And as always, don't forget to rate and review wherever you listen to podcasts.